Hello everybody and welcome to the Publishing Performance Show. Now today I'm really excited because I've been joined by Isabelle Knight. Now PR is a topic that a lot of people don't really want to talk about it. Maybe they don't even know exactly what it is, but it's an important thing to do if you are thinking about growing your author business as a brand. Now a lot of authors just think of themselves as writers, and this is fine for a lot of people, but if you really want to start making sales, you've got to start thinking about your overall online presence, your online reputation, and exactly how you're seen online and how people can interact with you and what your presence is going to be in their lives. So in this episode, we've got some great tips about how you can do the PR for yourself, there's some simple tips, how you can get started. And we've also going to go into how you can get some professional help with someone like Isabelle. This is a great episode and I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you in the show. Hello everybody and welcome to the Publishing Performance Show. I'm here with Isabelle Knight, who's former publicist to the stars with clients such as JK Rowling and the BBC, and she's also the founder of the Build Your Author brand, which helps authors to build their profile, to grow their readership and to sell more books, which is basically what this show's all about. So thanks Isabelle for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Teddy. It's a pleasure to be here. Great to be here. Thank you.
Great. So building your author brand. So I think building a brand is something that a lot of authors are kind of a bit scared of. You know, people always talk about, what do you mean by building a brand? It's not a business. You know, I'm just talking about myself. So maybe tell us a bit about that, building a brand and what that means.
Absolutely. People or authors, I should say, especially indie authors, self-published authors particularly, who are coming to the world of publishing without any prior knowledge of marketing, PR, all of these quite scary concepts, I think, for people that are brand new to them. Yeah. So the reason I started working with authors in self-publishing and indie publishing was because I saw that, you know, we had people putting out fantastic books and obviously pouring their heart and soul into their books, but then falling at the kind of first hurdles of, well, how do we, once our book is published, how do we find an audience for it? How do we find a readership? And how do we raise the author's profile so that they become known in their genre? They find more readers, and they really start to actually sell some books. Ultimately, most writers don't want to write books that they're not read by anybody, even if they're not imagining themselves becoming the next kind of, top 10 Sunday Times bestseller list authors. We still want to feel that our books are going to be read, are going to be enjoyed, we're going to have an audience for them. Yeah. So the building your author brand comes from my position of being a publicist for a really long time. And a publicist is, in short, somebody that creates opportunities to get people and their work known in the public eye. So it's about building profiles first and foremost, and it's about getting building audiences and getting them excited about the thing that you're bringing to them, that you're releasing. So I've worked in music, I've worked in film, TV, books. So I kind of was bringing all of this experience and seeing that we had huge gaps of knowledge in self-publishing and in the indie publishing world.
Yep.
So how do we go about starting to create a profile where people are going to, readers are going to know who we are, they're going to fall in love with our books, and then they're going to be eager for the next book to drop. Yeah. Most of the authors I work with would really want to be in that position where they know they're writing the next book and they know they've got readers out there ready and waiting. Yeah. So we build the brand, and by brand, again, I know that term in itself scares a lot of people. Yeah,
a lot of authors forget that they are the products, basically. People want to buy into them as an
that's
author.
It.
Yep.
So first of all, we have to kind of understand that, as you said at the top, authors don't want to feel like they're running a business, but once we get our head around the idea that writing books and selling them, we have to put ourselves in that frame of mind of we're now thinking of this as a business, because we're putting products on the market and we want to sell them. But what I don't mean by building an author brand is turning everybody into celebrity and everybody into a kind of all singing, all dancing, social media influencer. We're not talking about any of those things. What we're simply talking about is, what are your readers going to know you for?
Your online reputation, basically.
Yeah. What are they going to associate with you? What's your reputation going to be? When they hear your name as an author, where is their mind going to go immediately? Preferably, we want their mind to go to your books, and we want them to have an idea of what they're going to get from your books. So the first thing that I take authors through is identifying, well, what is it that we want people to associate with us as authors? What are those things that are going to be able to uniquely identify each author? And we base that on, and this is a fairly big concept to start with, but we base it on what are the values of that author and what are the values that are in their books, because everything they are as an author makes it into their books, whether consciously or not. So by getting to know the author, we're getting to know the books without having to read all the books first to have an idea of, well, what's this about, and where is this author coming from, and where are these books coming from? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So because you're basically talking about your online reputation, and it's how you can use publicity to essentially grow that. So you're talking, when we started, you telling us about how you did a lot of that publicity for, JK Rowling, BBC, like big brands like this. What sort of activities would it be that you were doing for them that would be growing that reputation?
So when we're talking about doing professional publicity and PR, a lot of it is talking about media relations at that level. So we're looking at what are the ways that we can. A lot of it is down to networking. So kind of networking is the sort of first rule of doing PR and publicity at that level. So who is paying attention to these brands, to this work?
Yep.
So for example, I worked on the team with JK Rowling to bring her strike books to TV with the BBC and US broadcasters.
Yep.
So one of the big things you have to say is, well, who, first of all, who's the audience? So we established we've got a TV watching audience, and we've got the readers of the books that we're hopefully gonna try and bring them to TV to fall in love with the TV series as well. And then we have to think, well, how are we going to reach those people? So we start to think through, what media are they going to consume? So we look at magazines that people are going to read. We look at newspapers they're going to read. And, when we're talking on a big brand level, we're talking about national news, we're talking about international news. So we start to look at where are the opportunities that we can secure. And then we get into what ideas we're going to use. So are we going to give them exclusives from the books, from the stories, from the TV filming? Are we going to do behind the scenes? Obviously reviews plays a part in that. Interviews plays a part in that. So these are all, at big level publicity, this is what we do. But
that's really interesting, because although you're talking about huge brands there, the stuff that the actual individual tasks aren't necessarily things that smaller people couldn't do, like on a smaller, much more niche level. So for example, if your book is in, it's about parenting, for example, it's a non-fiction book about parenting, maybe your target audience is parents. So like, how do you find them? Is it like particular Facebook groups, or is it where are people hanging out that are going to talk about it?
That's right. Yeah. So the first question you want to ask is, the very first question you want to ask is, who is my reader? And that's where a lot of authors already start to struggle, because when they're writing the book, often they're not really thinking about who is the reader going to be at the end of that process. So I like to get authors thinking about this stuff whilst they are writing the book, and certainly not waiting until they've pressed publish to then start thinking about, oh, right, who's my reader going to be and how am I going to reach them? So even when you start writing the book, be thinking about, who do I want to read this? And if it's a parenting non-fiction book, then we have a fairly clear route to, well, this is going to be for parents.
Right.
And then we can start, we start to get more specific. So what age group of children are we talking about? Are they parents of small children, teenagers? Are they women? Are they men? Where do they live? Are they in the UK? Are they elsewhere? So we start to get really specific. So, and because I work with fiction and non-fiction authors, I work with across the board. So certainly, I think fiction authors often struggle with this a lot, because often, they'll say to me, "Oh, but I've written a book set in space, and it's about love, and it's about, it's got monsters," and they say, "I've no idea who my book is for." So when we're looking at these, kind of concept fiction, that kind of thing, this is where coming back to, and I call it your author brand story. And that's the first thing I work on with authors. So we come back to, who are you as an author, and why have you written what you've written? So what are the kind of motivations? What are the things you're interested in, and where have those interests come from? And we look at the values behind your author brand story. So rather than saying, "Oh, right, we need to find fans of monsters for my book," we can say, okay, well, the book is about love, it's about peace, it's about freedom, it's about, so we start to look at what's the book actually about? What's the message that you want your readers to take away? And then we can start to say, okay, so these kinds of people might be interested in this kind of book. So that's the first thing you want to work on. Then it's about saying, okay, once we've identified who this reader could be, how are we going to reach them? So what social media platforms are they on? I mean, the number of times I get asked, "Oh, another author told me I should be on TikTok. Do you think I should be on TikTok?" And I always say, well, are your readers on TikTok? Are your readers on Instagram? Are your readers on Facebook? Like, where are they hanging out? Because if your readers aren't on TikTok, you're gonna get very disheartened very quickly. Yeah. And then we can look at what podcasts do they listen to, what radio do they listen to, what TV do they watch, do they read newspapers, do they read magazines, do they read news on the internet? So because now we have so many ways of reaching potential readers. So what we want to avoid is that kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall effect. Trying things out, and lots of authors do this. I know, they think, "Oh, I'll try this, I'll try this, I'll try this." And eventually they might hit on something that starts to work. But what I want to do is kind of leapfrog people over that process and say, right, well, let's really think about, where are those readers going to be? Let's work out where we're going to find them.
Right. So rather than just going straight for a particular tactic, it's more about thinking about the values of the book, really, or the values of you as an author, and what you think your readers will be listening to or reading as a result of those values. So creating that author profile and building it out. And then, so when you're creating that profile, especially for like fiction authors, as you mentioned, you said, you don't want to be just finding people that like monsters or spaceships. So when you're thinking about those values, do you think it's the sorts of things that would be represented in the book, or is it maybe what the author the sort of people he wants to approach with the with the book?
So like I said, often the author's values and motivations, we see them in the book, whether they have consciously said, right, I'm going to make this book about love, or about freedom, or about education, or about saving the planet from humanity, whether I'm going to overtly make it about those things or not. What we always start to see that the author's motivations, we start to see them in the book. But what happens with all for all of us, we all have our own stories about what motivates us to do the things we do in life, and to be passionate about the things we're passionate about. We all have this, but it's so difficult to see your own story because you're so close to it. So the first thing I do with authors is help them to see what might others see when they're looking at that author's story. So to help them to see it from an objective standpoint, because that's really hard to do for yourself.
Great. So you sort of help them build out those values, and then they can build that author profile themselves. That's really good. Once you've done that, where's the best place to find your audience? Because I know when I speak to people in these sort of calls, a lot of people talk about different Facebook groups. It's a great place to meet people, or sometimes it's newsletters which are about your niche. What's the best places to start to find that audience?
So one really good way, because I always say to my authors, and some of my authors who've worked with me now for 3 or 4 years, and I still say to them, remember to get to know your reader. Like, how well do you know your reader? And one really good way, if you're starting out, you've got no idea, you think, I don't know my reader, no idea who they are, is ask them. Ask your audience. Speak to them, communicate with them. So if you're on social media, ask questions. What kind of books do you like to read? What kind of, are you a non-fiction person? Are you a fiction person? Are you a books about cats person? There's so many ways that you can kind of find out things about your readers. So one of those ways is through newsletters. Yeah. So a newsletter should be seen as a communication tool.
So you're talking about your own newsletter or other people's?
So
newsletters?
this is so if the author has their own newsletter, I always say to people, start your newsletter as soon as you can. Like, start building an email list as soon as you can as an author. So one of the best ways to use a newsletter is to not see it as an advertising, a kind of billboard or a sandwich board, but to see it as a two-way communication tool. So it's a way of your readers getting to know you, getting to know more about you. The more we know about a person, the more invested emotionally we become. Yeah. So the more loyal we become as readers. And that's how you build up your core fan base, is by allowing those people to get to know a bit about you. And that doesn't mean that they have to know everything about you, and it doesn't mean that they have to know all of your secrets and all of your personal stuff, but just showing them a bit about who you are as an author is going to start to help them to become invested in you. So one of the ways you can do that definitely is through a newsletter. You've got a captive audience, so start building up that email list. So not only are you letting them know about when the next book is out, but you're letting them get to know you, and in turn you can get to know them. Make it reciprocal. Invite people to email you back. Yeah. Yep. I think that's one thing that I think lots of people don't do, is invite their readers to reply to their newsletter.
Yeah, 100%. Because also your newsletter, it's a good place for other people to maybe get in touch with you, and you might even be able to make some money out of other people advertising on your newsletter later on. It's
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, loads of ways that you can monetize it once you kind of start to get your list going. Yeah.
In terms of building that list up in the first place, one of the good tactics I use is to maybe put like a QR code or a link in your book where people can get in touch with you. Have you got other ways which are good for getting people in contact with you?
I think often giving readers something. So this is one of the big things that professional publicists and PRs and marketers use all the time. Yeah. Give your audience something for free. Yeah. So that they can start to hook them in. So for example, you can say to people, you could use your social media accounts to say, I'm going to be giving, the first 50 people that sign up to my newsletter are going to get the first 3 chapters of my next book for free, for example. Great. Yeah. Yep. And there's a million different variations you can do of that. It could be, I've created these amazing new bookmarks. The first 20 people that sign up are going to get a bookmark with their next book, or, whatever it is. There's so many different things you can create as an author to go alongside your books. It could be a short novella. It could be an ebook that then sends people not only to your newsletter list, but then to your books. So it's kind of creating that, you hear marketers talk about that customer journey. Well, it's starting to think about what are the sort of touch points that your reader has with you before they are invested enough to say, I'm going to take a punt on this person's book.
I know James Blatch, I was speaking to him a couple of weeks ago, he actually includes like flight logs in his books, which is a really interesting way of doing it. In my non-fiction books, I try and include things like extra PDFs or checklists, which are great for getting downloads, and also maybe like extra videos. So I've got one book which is about yoga, and I got videos where someone helps me to show those positions because I can't touch my toes.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Non-fiction books, you've got even I would dare to say even more ways of kind of creating things that can go alongside your book, like, you know, audios, visuals, extra kind of materials. Having said that, I've also got some of my fiction authors doing exactly the same thing. For example, I've got one author who's just releasing a new children's book, and she's created a whole load of educational material for teachers to use in schools, for example. Yeah. So there's still lots and lots of things that you can do with fiction as much as you can with non-fiction. Yeah.
With your sort of reputation that you're building up, a lot of people have pen names. They sometimes even have multiple pen names. Do you ever work with people who have more than one pen name, and how they manage having those multiple different reputations online?
Yeah. And this is a question I get asked a lot, and it's a great question, because I think lots and lots of authors struggle with this. Yeah. So I'm working with several at the moment who are writing under different, you know, they've got these books under this name, these books under this name, and they're writing in multiple genres. So this is where so the author brand story stuff that we've talked about a bit, this is where that really comes into play. Because what we want to do, what we don't want to do is to fracture your brand by having it split into lots of different little sections.
Yep.
And so readers of these books having no idea that you've also got these books over here. And where you've got somebody writing, say, in two wildly different genres, so they might be writing books for grown-ups and books for children, for example. Like that's quite a common combination for authors. So what we want to do is let our readers be aware that we have different kinds of books under different names, and that
so just be upfront about it, like literally.
Well, it's sort of being upfront about it, but being upfront about it in a clever way. So it doesn't mean to say that, because when we're marketing those books, obviously we're going to be marketing them differently. We're going to be speaking to different audiences, going to different places, using different media, using different techniques. But when we want to think about the author profile and the author brand, we want that to be a strengthened, strong brand, and it's perfectly all right for that one brand to be an umbrella for different sub brands, for want of a better term. So the author brand story is going to show us who you are as an author, and we're still going to see those things about you as an author in those different kinds of books.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you're not turning into a different person to write each of those books, even though they might be completely different in content and everything else.
Yeah. Okay. So it's about just creating that profile for that persona in many ways, isn't it?
For example, and then so then if somebody works with me and we're building up their profile, and then we're getting them opportunities to be interviewed for national magazines, newspapers, literary journals, for example. When you're being interviewed, you want to be able to speak about the different things you're doing. Yeah. You're not going to one day be interviewed as John Smith and the next day as, Eddie Johnson. We're not going to have different names, different people. So you want to be able to present your author brand as one brand.
Yep. Yeah, that's really important.
That's really important.
It's all about bringing back to you're creating a brand. You have to remember that it's about the consistency.
Yes.
So what you just touched on was really interesting, because you're talking about some of the different tactics. So it was like being interviewed by newspapers, that sort of thing. So that kind of brings it back a bit to PR, which I know you say it's different, but what are some of those tactics that people could be doing, such as getting interviewed by magazines?
Yeah. So being interviewed is a really, really powerful way of readers getting to know you, because remember, it's always thinking about how am I reaching my readers, and how are they going to get to know you best quickly. So if you're going to be interviewed, if you manage to get an interview in a national newspaper, a national magazine, radio station, I've got several authors now who have done so many radio interviews that they're actually being asked back to become regular guests for particular radio stations, which is awesome. I mean, that's amazing. Like, to take someone who's never done media at all ever before, and then a few months later they're being regularly interviewed on radio is fantastic. So that's the kinds of things that my authors are managing to do. And they've been interviewed in, like I said, national newspapers. they're doing in-store book launches. So Waterstones are actually inviting them to come and do your book launch in store. These are self-published authors, indie authors. They're speaking at events, festivals, speaking on podcasts. So that's kind of, I mean, so many ways that you can do those kinds of traditional type media opportunities. Then there are lots of other kind of techniques that we would use that authors can do for themselves. So collaborations is one thing.
Okay.
So, for example, if we talked about doing like giving your audience something for free. So, for example, one thing that I used to do a lot as a pro publicist is to collaborate with another business or organization where you can set up a promotion or a competition, giving away something. So
singers do it all the time, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. So one example is if and I always say to authors, who have you name checked in your book? This is always a good place to start. So I've had authors who've name checked particular venues in their books, for example.
Right, okay.
Like the detective goes into XYZ pub, for example. Yeah. So then you want to contact that pub and be like, oh, actually, I've talked about you in my book. This could be some nice extra publicity for you. Why don't we do a launch event at your pub, or we run a competition, or we do something on social media, or we approach a local magazine or newspaper, get them to run a competition. They can win a night in a hotel. Like, say, if you for example, if you wherever you've name checked, win something and win a copy of your book. So that's one really good way of doing a kind of promotion as a collaboration. It's not going to cost you anything. But all it is time and being bold enough to approach people. Like I said, networking is one of the top rules of PR.
Yeah. And you definitely wouldn't need to be famous to do that sort of thing.
No, not at all. No.
Before you were talking about some of the more traditional things like getting interviewed in national magazines and stuff, do you are these, like, would you expect all these to be free? Like, or you wouldn't have to pay for them? Because I know, for example, things like Forbes 30 under 30, like that sounds like great publicity, but those guys just paid to be on there. It's not like they're not particularly special. They can just afford the 20 grand or whatever it is to appear on the list.
Yeah.
So
this is a really good question, because I think this is coming up more and more as we see the rise of, like, online on social media. We're constantly seeing people I can show you how to get PR. I can show you how to get, how to do publicity, and what and I get spam messages all the time to my own inbox. And I've stopped bothering to reply, saying I'm actually a professional publicist. I don't need anybody else to get me to but they'll say to me, oh, we can get you free PR. Just pay XYZ fee to the magazine. If you're paying a fee for something, then, kind of de facto, that is not PR. PR is, in its true form, PR is a third party endorsement. That's what publicity is. PR is reputation management, is creating reputation. Publicity is getting third party endorsement from somebody. So that's an endorsement that comes from them either, being willing for whatever reason to endorse, to say, this, do you know what, this book's great, go and buy it. Or for a magazine to say, actually, you seem really interesting as an author, we think our readers would be interested to find out more about you, we'll interview you. They're not going to charge you for that. You're not going to pay them money for that. So as I said, in its pure form, PR is not something you pay for. So you might pay to work with someone who's going to help you to get these opportunities. So you're paying the person to help you, but you're not paying for the opportunities themselves. So when you get interviewed on a radio station, they're not going to say, oh, right, that's, here's the invoice. That's not how this works.
Yeah, no.
So if you, like you said, the whole Forbes thing, which seems to have really, really taken off in the last few years, whereas people are essentially paying to be featured. And so that's a whole different thing. That's not PR or publicity.
Right. Okay.
Essentially, that's advertising. If you're paying for it, it's advertising.
Great.
Yeah.
And so obviously you wouldn't recommend people do that sort of thing, but with some of the authors you've worked with, you've obviously had some really good successes. So even if you can't name the authors, do you have any good case studies of some of the things you've done and how that's impacted the author's work?
Yes. I mean, I can probably mention I'll mention a couple of people because
we'll put links to their books in the
nice. Yeah,
note as well.
Yeah. So I'll mention two authors who've been working with me for a while. So one is she writes children's books and suspenseful romance novels, and her name is Pauline Tate. Go and look her up; she's fantastic. And she's a Scottish author, and this is an example of how using PR and publicity in your long-term strategy, because this isn't about just doing something once or doing, right, I'm going to do PR for 3 months and that's going to be it. It's about saying, right, I'm always using publicity in my book marketing strategy. So
it's about committing to like building your brand on an ongoing basis.
Exactly.
Right, okay.
Exactly. So Pauline, I think she is, so she's published 2 books in her Marin Bay series, so that's her romantic novels, suspenseful romance, and they're set on the Isle of Skye. She's a Scottish author, and Pauline has managed to create really solid relationships, first of all with bricks and mortar bookstores in Scotland, with festivals in Scotland. She does regular speaking. She's been featured in newspapers and magazines up there. So she's a great example of someone that's using PR and publicity. All the things that we've kind of worked on together, she's using those now as part of her ongoing strategy.
And it sounds like she's just built that through building a network. Like, she's gone to one festival, she might meet someone there who runs another festival who invites them. And it's not always active work where you're saying, it's about, as you said, build out that reputation. It's not necessarily what's the main tactic I can use to get into this festival. It's more about committing to being that sort of brand online.
And knowing really clearly how to present your author brand, and knowing how to pitch yourself. The art of pitching, which is something that I'll be working on with people on my next course. That's one big thing that we work on. Knowing how to pitch yourself, whether it's to press, whether it's to agents, publishers, whether it's to book festivals, literary festivals, awards. Like lots of my authors are pitching themselves for awards. All of these things that is something that you learn, and it's something you get better at the more you do it.
But pitching's not just like Dragon's Den where you're sitting there and there's loads of investors. It's actually just how you compose yourself in life, isn't it? It's like how you talk about your books, how you talk about your brands, like that sort of thing.
That's right. And so really, getting to grips with it, not shying away from it. Because I think, I've said before, I've been quoted as saying, authors shouldn't be hiding behind their books.
Yeah.
They've got to come out from behind the book and show who they are in a way that they are comfortable doing. Like I said, this isn't about dragging personal details out into broad daylight. This is about deciding, who am I as an author? How am I going to show up? And doing that consistently.
Yeah. Because you hear a lot of people, they say like high level things like, what is your why? You've got to find out what your why is. And I always think that doesn't make any sense. I don't know what my why is, but this actually it is your brand, isn't it? It's like finding out why you're doing it. And that's the reason why people buy into your story.
Yes. That's it. Exactly. Yeah.
And you said you had another case study you thought was a good one to share.
Yeah, I've got one other. So this is Dr. Catherine McAleese, so completely different. She's a non-fiction author, and she wrote a book called Enough, which is essentially helps you with your mindset, kind of well-being, mental health mindset for business. And we did a fantastic book launch for Catherine. So her audience was based on the other side of the Atlantic in the main. So she couldn't kind of be anywhere in person to speak to her readers. So she identified that she would need it would be an online launch so that she could communicate with them and get them on board. And she created, first of all, a Facebook group that everyone joined in, and there were kind of events in there, activities in there, and she encouraged her readers to go to their local bookshops to order her book. So whether if a bookshop is not stocking your book, a reader can still go and ask them to order it in, and the vast majority of bookshops will do that if they think they're going to make a sale. If they have a reader that wants to buy a book from them, they will order that book. So she encouraged her readers to do that, and they would take a selfie with themselves with the book to share with the rest of the group online. And in turn, a lot of the bookshops got involved and got on board, and then they would kind of repost these posts, so they were tagging the bookshop in the posts. So it was a kind of win-win for everyone. Bookshops were happy. The author has her readers helping her to promote the book in kind of real time and sharing that online. So that was a really great
absolutely love that
launch. Yeah.
So, an author here did something quite similar. I can't remember her name, but I'll put the link into the chat. But it's a local children's book reader to where I am in Leeds, and she basically went to all the local bookshops around here and set up book signings, like in their books for like all these. And she was like, "I'm from Leeds, this is it," and she got really good turnout for them. And each of the people who got a signed book got a little pot of honey because the book was about bees.
I love that. Yeah,
it works really well.
That's great. I wonder if I've heard of that author.
I'll see if I can get it. So let's just before we wrap up, if we're for people that are starting out, it's like if they've got one or two books, what would let's think about some of the main tactics that they should be focusing on first, like in order to build that sort of online brand.
Yeah. So like I said, kind of recapping, really get to know the reader, figure out who is the ideal reader. Never think, I just want everybody to read my book. That's never the answer to that question of who is your reader. So figure out who they are, or figure out who they could be or might be, and then start to figure out, how am I going to communicate with them? So using social media platforms to ask them questions, get to know who your reader is, get them on your newsletter by, inviting them to join the newsletter, give them something in return. So these are all the first things that I think every author should be doing.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. So what about things like, should they be building a website or anything like that at first, or do you think there's smaller tactics they should be focusing on?
I mean, building a website is definitely something they should be doing. And, I'm not an expert at building websites. We know people that are in the author space, but definitely be thinking about what's going to go on the website. So it's not just, again, a website is not just a kind of billboard, a sandwich board. It's not just blaring out information. So it's not just about, here's the book, please buy it. It's about, here I am as an author. What am I saying about myself as an author that is going to allow my readers to start investing in me? Brilliant. And that comes down to like we said, the values, the author brand story.
Brilliant. Thank you. And in your build your author brand course, so we're covering a lot of these topics. So what would people expect if they were signing up to the course? Like how does it work? What would be the outcome from it?
So they get, they learn all of the things that we've been discussing. So we start from the beginning, which is, what's your author brand story? They get to grips with that. We uncover, what are we saying about the author, the values, how are we creating the brands? We create the brand. Then we look at who is the reader, because once we've got the author brand story, then it often leads us directly to the ideal reader. So we look at who the ideal reader is. Then we figure out where we're going to find those people. We look at pitching, like I said, that that's one big piece is learning how to pitch, looking at the opportunities you want to go for, and then helping people to build from there.
Great.
So the next course is going to be bigger than the ones I've been running so far. It's going to be
bigger
more
in terms of people, or
in terms of what we cover, and it's going to be a bit longer, and we're going to go a bit deeper into everything. And I'm going to bring in a couple of guest mentors. So we will be looking at websites and the kind of what I call the sort of nuts and bolts of digital marketing. So the kind of the Amazon categories, that kind of stuff as well, because all of these things have to sort of work together. So we're going to go, it's going to be a slightly longer, more in-depth journey for this next course.
Brilliant.
So yeah, I'm excited.
And how does it work? Is it like, do you do the course in your own time, or is it over a set period of time?
So over a set period of time, you get some things that are pre-recorded so that you can work through those by yourself, and then you get time with me and the group. So you basically get access to me. You can ask me all of your questions. I get my eyes on your work, on your brand. So you get some kind of intensive work with me, and then some where you can go at your own pace. To learn the modules. Yeah.
And it's all about making sure you're building your author brands over the long term, not short-term wins. It's more about long-term building your profile.
Right. It's Brilliant. Not just for Christmas. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I think, it's been a great chat. There's been loads of stuff we talk about. If people want to get in touch with you, where's the best ways they can contact you?
So if they go straight to my website, which is buildyourauthorbrand.co.uk, if you want to, you can even book a quick call with me if you want to speak to me about what to do next with your author brand, or you're just not sure. And you can follow me on, I think, just about all of the social media platforms. I mainly hang out on Threads, Instagram, TikTok and LinkedIn.
Great. Thank you very much. So just before we go, there's just one last question. And what's the book that you recommend that you think everyone should be reading at the moment?
Yes. I did think about this. And so I think I've already mentioned the two authors that I've mentioned. I would urge you to read their books, both very different books, but brilliant examples of great self-published books. And another book that I have read, sort of building up my own business, which I loved, was The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. I don't know if you know that one.
Yes, haven't read it, but it's on my list of
a
million books on my Kindle, which I've bought but not read.
Yeah.
What did you like about that book?
It's a great one to kind of help you to open up your mind in terms of what's possible for you, because I think a lot of this, and for authors as well, is about working on your mindset, working on what is possible for you to achieve.
Brilliant. Yeah, the art of thinking big.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for that. It's been loads of great tips for everyone. I think everyone's going to get lots out of the session. So yeah, hopefully we'll speak again. We'll speak again soon.
Amazing. Thank you, Teddy. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.